I'll turn it over to Ginny. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, thank you to the Newman Center always. This is the heart and soul of so much in our community. And I want to start with the quotes from Pope Leo's new document. It's his first major document because we're talking about the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable, or the preferential choice, as he says, which is a difference, But in his first major document, he said Scripture and tradition clearly show that God has a special place in his heart for the poor and oppressed. And he asks his church to make a decisive and radical choice in favor of the weakest. I also love the fact that he said many Christians have to go back and reread the gospel. You know, they've forgotten that faith and love of the poor go hand in hand. Whatever form of poverty, he made that very clear also, which is core to our Catholic social teachings, whatever form of poverty. So I want to take us on a little bit of a journey, the first part being my own journey with Catholic social teachings and what it has meant to me and my faith. Many people are part of the Catholic faith, and then it used to be called you fall away. People would quit being involved. They wouldn't see the relevance. So folks would end up as a fallen away Catholic. I guess that's what I was for 18 years. You know, my husband and I were busy raising our children, you know, all the things that go on with that. It just didn't seem relevant to our life. Now, I was a 60s protester. We believed in justice. You know, we believed in having core beliefs. And I think that that was part of my response in saying, you know, what does this faith community, what is it bringing to my life? Which is the opposite thing one should ask, but that is what we ask when we have to divide up our times, etc. So, somehow, in the early 90s, both my husband and I decided we needed to have that spiritual grounding. We missed it. We were born and raised Catholics. You know, there's nothing like that. Going to Catholic schools I went for 12, he went for 13 before switching to other secular schools. But there was nothing, there was something missing. Where is that spirituality? What is it that we need? And as we were still raising our children, realizing that they may be missing out, even though we had sent them to Catholic schools, we veered after a while on that because it became obvious that they were not receiving the education that we thought they needed. So I began the journey back, going, though, to different faith traditions. I thought, okay, we might have missed a lot of things here. Let's look at our Lutherans. Let's look at our sort of evangelical. They weren't as many evangelicals then as there are now. Looking at these different, actually going and attending their services, getting to know them, thinking, is this where we fit? Well, somehow, I ended up coming to the Newman Center and realized that this core faith that I had been raised on, all of it was still part of me. And my husband agreed. So we started the journey of learning. And part of the learning had to do with I got so excited when I found out about Catholic social teachings. That was the best kept secret at that time of the Catholic Church. And this was late 80s, early 90s. So I continued on that journey and ended up realizing that that gave me life, it gave meaning, and it gave me faith. So from there, it's just evolved. But there is nothing more life-giving than to live out of faith. The joy and the understanding that this is what it's about. This is the core. It's not about not eating meat on Friday. It's not about some of the other rules and regulations that seem to be oppressive. It's about the love. It's about the core. How do we live? It's not about the 10 Commandments per se. We all knew those. But how could we not know that next step, the Catholic social teachings? And the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable is just so alive and just so obvious through the scripture, through the tradition. It's not like we're just making it up for the liberals to have something to go hang their hat on. No. And that's one of the things with that little sheet I passed out. You've got on the back all the scriptures, the main ones. You've got some of the encyclicals and the teachings from the popes. It's just kind of the core to why Catholic social teachings needed to be defined and needed to be highlighted in our faith. So things went along, and it became so obvious to me that living that was most important. And I was doing Peace and Justice with Christ the King. Mayor Pam Miller came and asked me to bring together faith communities because we were in a time just like we're in now. The paradigm shift of welfare to work, the cutting back of food stamps, the taking folks off disability was that whole force of our federal government to save money. And we called it it was a paradigm shift. And our mayor said, wait a minute, the faith community has to help fill in those gaps. We're going to have a lot of people suffering. We're going to have people lose their food stamps. We're going to have people lose their welfare support, their checks. We're going to have people lose their disability, which they did. It was brutal. A lot of people forget how brutal that was, and I've kind of been thinking a lot lately, man, this is history repeating itself. A little more open, a little more nasty, but it did happen. So bottom line is, she asked if I would bring together the faith communities to see what kind of filling in the gap, because she saw and was the first city in the United States to take the federal government up on make your own plan and we'll fund it. Most people just took the funds that came federal to state to their local, saying this is how you have to spend it. Not Pam. She understood that we were unique in Lexington. She understood that we could help fill some of those gaps because there wasn't going to be enough to go around to fill all of them. So she wanted the faith community to come together. And I was just naive enough to think that, sure, a white Catholic woman could call together faith community groups in Lexington. I mean, Sunday morning at 10 o'clock is the most segregated time, as we all know, of the week. And definitely back in 1994. We think it's bad now. Whoa. Well, somehow, people's faith made them respond. No one could believe. We invited 421 communities of faith, and we had 268 come together. Met at the Cathedral of Christ the King A white Catholic woman doing Cathedral of Christ the King and asking these people to come. You know, it's like, wait a minute. But they set aside their theologies. They set aside their differences because they knew that caring for the poor, just like what we have here, is a preferential option of all faiths, of all communities. So we were able to do a bunch of things, started 5 committees, did all this stuff. Feed the Hungry was one. I mean, a lot of it was just people connecting in order to offer the services. So it went on for a bit, and then someone came and said, why don't we have a Catholic worker here? And they asked me, because they thought I would know. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, well, that sounds good, but we're doing what we can right now. We've got our Feed the Hungry program. We got our mentoring. We got our transportation. We got our insurance. We've got our financial literacy program. Those were the 5 areas that Faith and Community Task Force took on. And they said, okay. So then someone else asked about 2 weeks later, why don't we have a Catholic worker here? And I thought, okay, I got to find out what the heck they're talking about. Well, of course, it was the story of Dorothy Day. It was Catholic worker, not meaning, you know, it's a universal worker. It's a universal, everyone coming together to take care of the poor, to take care of our brothers and sisters. Well, my goodness, once I found that out, I thought, this is it. This is amazing. So Judy McLaughlin and I kept talking about it. Found a little building down at the corner of 5th and Chestnut that we just had to put $500 down on out of our own pockets, and let the owner said he'd hold it for 6 months. And I said, we've got people of faith that will pay for it. $75,000 for that building. We didn't have money for the utilities. We didn't have money for the insurance, but we knew it could be done. We knew because we'd been working since 1994 with these communities of faith to fill in the gap. Somehow it worked. You know, I was telling somebody this morning, it was funny when Judy and I started that, and there were plenty of people. It started right here, by the way. There were so many people that came to those, supported the meetings, not just supported the meetings, got their hands dirty, got involved, but somebody had to say, okay, we'll take responsibility. I wrote the check for the $500. So what we, you know, my vision was, I had been a tax accountant for 29 years. And my vision was that with this wonderful community that we have, all we have to do is bring together the bubbles. People care. People want to take care of the poor. People want to solve problems. We have to give people that chance. But bubbles have to be brought together. I had never been down at 5th and Chestnut till that one Sunday morning that for somehow the Holy Spirit just had me go drive down there because we were looking for a place. We had decided we were going to start something. And we had a group of Catholic Heart Work Camp kids coming the next week to help us. And the one place that we were going to get, which is now the lighthouse, by the way, was condemned structurally. So we had to back up. And that morning, it was 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and I'll never forget it. I was driving down 5th Street thinking, where the hell am I? What is this part of Lexington? And that's how we found it. So it's never been a journey that, I mean, it's been a journey of faith. And it's been a journey of community. We couldn't have done that. It took all of us. And everybody saw it and understood we've got to make a difference. We've got to help the suffering of the poor. We were getting a chance to understand what the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable was. There was no question. It was a choice. It really wasn't a choice. It was just so obvious. It's just like when we see suffering now, it's not a choice. You know you got to do something. So we got the center going, and but I was telling somebody that Judy and I both thought that, okay, this will probably take us about 3 years. We're going to have a house of hospitality where people can come. We will give them food. We'll be open 8-5, Monday through Friday, and we'll solve poverty. We'll take care of all these people. Everyone said there are only so many that are struggling. So, well, it didn't take but about a month to realize being open from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 or whatever, 5 days a week, was leaving a lot of people out. We would have Tim who would come and sit in the back corner, freezing to death when it was cold. And everyone that was there, when we got ready to close the door, they'd look at us and say, where are we supposed to go? Can we stay in here? We won't mess anything up. So we realized we had to go beyond that. So our journey went to Community Inn and now to the Catholic Action Center on Industry Road, which involves standing up to a lot of things. We've sued the city twice, but we're their friends. But we had to sue them to make them realize that we have a right as Catholic Christians to live our faith, and that there is that law, religious land use. It is there, which says we have a right to live our faith. We have a right to feed the hungry. We have a right to shelter the homeless, even if the neighbors don't like it. And I know that gets real testy. That's been one of the testiest things we've had to deal with over the years. And as I'm on the task force for the new homeless shelter, it starts this week. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be a wonderful journey. But I'm going to be just very happy to listen and to understand everyone's position, but yet not back up from our preferential option for the poor and vulnerable. Because I think that that's what gets lost. If we as Catholic Christians could take over AI, I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know anything about computers or IT, et cetera. But just think, if AI were programmed to be based on Catholic social teachings, what an influence. What an amazing influence it would have on society. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. We as Catholic Christians are the AI. Every time we're willing to stand up and speak for the poor, stand up and speak that because people are poor, they don't need to be vilified, stand up and speak that our homeless don't need to be arrested because they don't have a place to live, stand up and speak that poverty is not their fault, being judged because they're poor, being afraid of them because they're poor. I mean, at the Catholic Action Center right now, since COVID actually, we've had to focus. We had to make some preferential choices for the poor and vulnerable, even within our community of the poor. We have to focus on our elderly and disabled as far as the community at the Catholic Action Center. I don't like to call it a shelter. We're a community. It's a family. 101 beds. Most of them are elderly or disabled. We found that, as COVID progressed particularly, and all of us are aging, us baby boomers, that people are being left out. 85-year-old man came to us last week. He's been living in his truck. He was worried about it getting cold tonight, tomorrow night, etc. He said, is there any chance you've got a bed? I can't get up and down from the Hope Center floor. Well, we wouldn't make him anyway. Yeah, we found a place for him. We've been working on the dignity rooms for elderly and disabled. The hospitals call us when somebody is being released and they don't have any place. We're working on a longer term thing, which is considered respite with bluegrass. No. Well, yes, we always work with bluegrass care navigators every day. They call us when they've got these folks because there's no place they can go after they finish. But the Health First, along with CHI, is working with us to start up a new respite program. Because we see that suffering. The elderly disabled, what kind of society are we if we turn our backs on the poor of, not just of spirit, but the poor, they may have some money, not a lot, but the poor who are elderly or disabled, the poor who are isolated. Some of these folks may have enough to find them an apartment someplace, but they can't live on their own. They're disconnected. Families have given up on them, and they're not necessarily giving up on them because they've done bad things. You know, we can become inconvenient. We got a weird society now that doesn't see the joy and connection of human beings. So we feel good about that, you know, focus that we're having. I'll tell you a few of our people. I mean, it's just pretty amazing. We have this one gentleman, Wilbur, who's 89 years old. He can't see worth crap. We get him the care to be able to see enough to get around. He's been with us for 6 years. He had a stroke a couple of years ago, and we had tried our damnedest to get hold of his family because we knew there were still 3 family members left. Finally, we tracked down one in Alabama who said, "We've been wondering where he was." And we said, "Great, come on up and see him. Come on up and get him." You know, he might be part of our community, but his care is getting beyond us. Well, they did come. They came 10 days later, and they were so happy to see him and find out that he was doing well. And then they said bye. They had no space for him. It broke his heart. But he turned to me and he said, "Miss Jenny, I've got a family. It's the Catholic Action Center." So no matter what a pain in the butt he can be, no matter what challenges we have, our folks at the center, his brothers and sisters, help him get to the bathroom. They help dress him. He doesn't have insurance that would cover anybody having a caregiver, which of course would be impossible. But our folks do it because they are his family. That connection is the core of all of us, being connected, being loved. So another one, we have Tom, who was a professor at the University of Kentucky for years. Then he ended up in Woodland Park on a park bench and kind of under a bottle. Not unusual, people go through their struggles. So he came to us. He had a stroke. We brought him back, and he was cared for with bluegrass care navigators in between. And Cardinal Hill. I mean, everybody works together. And now he's been with us for 4 years. And it's his family. We don't put time limits because you can't. I mean, when we celebrate when people are able to reconnect with family or get on their own. But it's a preferential option for the poor and vulnerable. It's the dignity of each human being. It's the community coming together to take care of them, which is what the Catholic Action Center has been able to do for 26 years. I wouldn't be standing here talking about the Catholic Action Center if we didn't have people who donate to the Catholic Action Center. We don't take federal, state, local money. The reason we don't is because it would limit who we can serve. It would limit us being able to make a preferential option. It'd limit us from being able to take care of that family we did last week, excuse me, whose father is undocumented and mother is who just had a baby, is here on asylum, and whose 3 children are in Fayette County Public Schools, who he had to quit working because he did not want to be ripped away from his family. They lost their apartment, and the apartment, they were sending them to court, and we had to help them hide. And they're going to be fine. We had to give them a safe place to be. Not at the Catholic Action Center. We don't take children, just 18 and over. That's our Give Kids a Home program. Those kids, along with the family, are safe now. They're having a lot of other folks work with them. But there are some, and I'm sure, Rebecca, you'll talk some about this. There's some of these folks that are getting really stuck because the agencies who had been there to support them have been ripped apart or are gone, totally gone, or are not allowed to serve them. We serve God's children, doesn't matter who they are. So then we have Jeff that I wanted to tell you about. Jeff he was younger, he was 56, and he had lived in the woods and had a spider bite 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago. He ended up not taking care of his leg, lost his leg to infection, and came to the Catholic Action Center. And he never connected with people that much. He was very bitter and sad, about what had happened. And we just kept letting him know, you can be here. It's no problem. Well, sadly, about 2.5 weeks ago, he's been with us all this time, back and forth. He was with Bluegrass Care Navigators after one of the surgeries, and he was with Cardinal Hill and every place else. But about 2.5 weeks ago in the early morning, he had gone out to do whatever and was hit on the median of New Circle Road near the center and was killed. And Jeff didn't have any family, but we did find his son. It took a few weeks. He did have some family, but people will tell us they don't because they think they'll be turned down, just as Wilbur was. It's easier to not ask than to get your heart broken because your family says no. But sadly, he is one of our 113 folks over the years that we have Christian burials for. But we're their family. Because we do have a preferential option for those who are vulnerable and those who are poor. And we believe in the connection. We believe in the love that Pope Leo talks about. That every one of these encyclicals or letters or whatever they are, the different ones, as well as the Gospels, the basis is loving each other. So I want to tell you one other thing. We completed this at the end of August, our 2025 street survey. I always like to give a little info. Well, our street survey is the 3rd year of doing it. So we've been able to compare it, and it's been, it went up. This year it went down 5%, the folks that were living on the streets. And it went down because everybody's hiding. I've got two groups of our Compassionate Caravan were out yesterday, and they're going to be out again this afternoon, trying to get to the folks that hide to let them know, as strange as this may sound, a lot of them don't know what's coming. It's going to be 22 degrees tonight. That kind of flash drop makes them sick. We've got supplies for them if they don't want to come in. Our good friends at the Lighthouse are opening an emergency shelter tonight and tomorrow night. We're getting people there. We're helping with supplies. Because the winter shelter program for the city is not opening until next Saturday. But, you know, the calendar says one thing and the weather says another, and our people suffer. So when we did the survey, we do a lot of statistics, and I invite you all to go to our website and look at it. There's a lot more than for me to talk about. But the one thing I do want to talk about is that as you hear everything about those experiencing homelessness across our country, in our state, and in our community of Lexington, that's what ours is, the Lexington focus. We've had the leaders of our country as well as the leaders of our legislatures saying that the people who are experiencing homelessness, we have to impose this on them because they are addicts and they are mentally ill. We've got to do this as a humanitarian thing. We're going to arrest them and get them help. Well, that's bullshit. But I will tell you this. I mean, our city people, our police are great. They have been pretty good with them. We've got a lot of people who keep getting arrested, though. And I said, well, but our judges have been phenomenal because they weren't charging them the fees for the court fees. But as this has drug on for a year and a half, there's a lot of people who have a lot of charges out there, which makes them fear and makes them hide, okay? But the big thing I want to say to you all, the biggest number to share, is that 31% of those experiencing homelessness, and this is even a national number, and it proved true on our local street survey, 31% of the folks are either addicted or mentally ill. They're not criminals. 69% of them are simply poor. That's it. They just don't have the money. And if you got to hear and see the stories that we get to hear and see every day, break your heart. So our preferential choice has to be who we focus on as Catholic Action Center, and that is our elderly, disabled, and our families with children through our Give Kids a Home. And we are working with everybody everywhere. But you've got to remember, even back in the 90s, when we lived through the welfare to work, there's so many casualties of these laws and this, I don't know what to call it, this wave that is overtaking the government. They're casualties, and these are our brothers and sisters. Even then, we did the best we could to fill in the gap. Now we'll be there standing in the gap as we continue through this, but we're already at a critical time because of the high cost of rental, because of the increased number of people being evicted, and because a lot of people now want to blame the poor, want to judge that it's their fault if they'd walk in their shoes. So we cannot let the poor be objects of disdain, and that's what we're all witnessing. We cannot let the forgotten be blamed for their poverty or arrested because they simply are homeless and poor. But we as Catholic Christians, as our Catholic social teachings tell us and lead us to, we must stand with them and remind our families, remind our community, and remind the world that we're all called to love and care for the poor. It isn't an option. It is our call. So that's about all I got to say. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and I don't know what time it is, so I'll just talk. Okay. But there's so many things going on. If you all have any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to, but I can promise you that it's a never-ending journey. Yes.
First of all, thank you for the work that you do and also for sharing about some of the people's stories.
Yeah.
Really helpful to hear and understand. There's been a lot of innovations that I've seen in terms of dignity housing.
Yeah.
Ideas like small cargo boxes that are turning into homes that you can stack and get more people in space. Roller bags that turn into tents. That kind of stuff. And that's controversial because it doesn't really solve the problem, but it gives them some autonomy and dignity. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
I've always thought those were great, but I mean, the problem you've got in Lexington, Kentucky is called zoning. That's been the fight that we have gone to court many times. So that's why I'm kind of excited about this task force. If we can get the whole community to understand these barriers and that there are options. There are some pretty good options. We are facing the fact, finally, that we're 350 to 500 beds short on any given night of emergency housing. We're not talking about the 22,000 units of affordable housing we're short. But yes, see, it becomes an us versus them if we're not careful, and we've kind of been the versus or them. But we had to. We have to keep saying it and shouting it and getting them to see the statistics. And now they finally embraced it because we were able to utilize their own studies and utilize their own way of saying, well, we have to do this in order to take care of that. Fine, do it. We've been as patient, you know. But it's exciting because I think that this may be, it could be one of two things. It could be a way of shutting it all down, but I'll look at it the other way. I think it's a way of opening up people's eyes, minds, and hearts to the reality and understanding of our situation of homelessness in Lexington. So all these ideas, they need to come, you know, there are all kinds of ways. Yes?
How many homeless, on your surveys, how many homeless people are there in Lexington?
I think it was 2,815 this last. The year before was 3,014. But that difference was because a lot of them hiding. It's harder to find them. But it was over 2,800. Now, HUD, everybody will tell you, any counts that are done are not accurate. We know that because we did it for 15 hours. We swarmed the city with wonderful volunteers and people given their surveys that we do, and so that we can verify. So HUD even has always said, if you do a really good count, you're getting about a third. So are we talking about 9,000? I don't know. See, numbers are important in order to address it, but none of them are numbers. Yeah.
So businesses that are near the one that's going in on Versailles Road, or I think it's on Versailles Road.
Yes, that's going to open on Saturday. That is going to be from till the end of
Businesses in those areas.
March.
can they do to help?
See, that's what we've talked about with them a lot, with the city. They're running that. Well, EDS is running it, but the city is responsible for it. And we ask that they do some open talks before. I mean, we meet with people, everybody, you can find a lot of businesses that'll scream and shout about the Catholic actions in Eastland that'll scream and shout about us. But I mean, it has gotten much better. We continued in conversation with them. I've gone to so many of those conversations that you just have to kind of smile and say, when something comes up, we will deal with it, but please don't just assume that's a problem. I'm hoping that they are doing some pretty good things. It's going to be a mess. I mean, honest, can't say. There's going to be 216 beds. It is going to be difficult, but I think overall it will be good. It will save lots of lives. And I think that they are pouring resources into it, from outreach teams to the police. So, I think that they really are. Now, the sad thing is those roads scare the heck out of me. We're going to have all those people run over. We know that. But we're just going to continue on. But it's supposed to open this Saturday. Finally, it was supposed to open on the 1st, but it got delayed with lights, electricity.
So in 2018, in January, you put on the Catholic Action Center website, quote, the first question which the priest and the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me?
Huh.
But the Good Samaritan reversed the question, if I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
And I think that you'd also say, the question is, who am I if I don't help this man?
Yeah.
For myself, I have said to myself, I must find the gift in that I was born in this and live in this age. So I was a little girl in the civil rights era. I was definitely taught about justice from the time I was born.
Yeah.
And, I can talk about that in a bit about, but I was blessed with the Vatican II from first grade at Christ King. But I would say that that when you go to your first statements was, this isn't their fault. Well, any of us raised with Catholic families, you were told, do this, don't do that, this is your fault, go to confession. So we're aware of fault. But maybe that's really not even the question asked, whether it is or isn't their fault, because who walks, without sin. But what you chose, the path you've chosen in others is a risk taking. And I see that myself, just personally, when I look at what people are doing today to stand up for others who are being swept off the streets and stuff. So I drive from the jail, and we do nothing, very little for people who we incarcerate in Fayette County, which I suggested here a year ago we could do more. Because unlike other places where we elect our jailers and they're independent from the city, our jail is completely controlled by our city. Our mayor controls our jail. That's different than any other place. I would suggest that 50% of those released from our jail have no place to go.
Yeah.
And I represent a lot of them, they have no place to go. So they're homeless and then they get picked up. And you mentioned mentally ill and addicted, and they're not criminals. Well, really, they usually are. They usually are criminals and they're mentally ill and they're addicted. So usually it flows together.
Which is 31%, not 100% of those experiencing homelessness. That's the deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely right. So 31% are mentally ill or addicted is what you're saying, and then the others are not, yet they experience homelessness. Another big pocket of homelessness, I represent a child, I can talk about some next week, but who was raised in the foster care system, born to a 50-year-old mom who prostituted herself and hid in the closet while she did, he was 4 years old, sent off to place after place after place. But those children coming out of foster care at 18, they're a huge part of our homeless population as well.
There.
But nonetheless, I think that we are not called to make a decision about whether it's this individual's fault or not before we help them. The Samaritan story doesn't indicate that the guy figured that out before he helped him. And it also, he brought him to his place. He let him stay. He paid for it in sort of like it wasn't a slum hotel. He really loved that, which is an interesting
Right.
guidance to us who don't want our next door neighbor a drug rehab place. I mean, none of us do want that, really, our next door neighbors to be a drug rehab place, but yet, look at that story. Tells us.
It changes when you look through the lens of Catholic social teachings. If we all could look at each decision we're making that way, it would be very difficult, somewhat impossible, but would change our world. Yeah.
I think your stories just really illustrated how many layers there are to so many situations. And so, it sounds like you're many times the connection point, but what other services or organizations in Lexington are really helpful in kind of unpacking the different levels? I think especially of families where you have children in public school. You have
Well, the McKinney-Vento, we work hand in glove with McKinney-Vento program through Fayette County Public Schools. We have that's how we connect with those families. Everybody does. Everybody, but the thing is, nobody has any place to turn now because of so many things that have been cut. And I'm making a broad statement, but it really is, the different groups are feeling that. But we all work together. I mean, there's some, now the difference is, just as we thought we were going to be at 5th and Chestnut, an 8 to 5 organization, the difference is we are 24/7. So I get calls at 2 in the morning and, all weekend, et cetera. So it's, people know there's a place to turn to. Whether we can solve it for them or not is another question. But we can at least hear it and try to see which partners can be the best to handle it.
And the McKinney-Vento is a federal law. And it was to be enforced by the U.S. Department of Ed, so with them gone, people who litigate on that, half of those kids have no authority to go to make them do their job.
Well, the good news is, though, that our Fayette County Public Schools, as much as we hear about everything else that's happening, they've got a passion for these kids. The family resource centers do. They know that we're all in this together supporting them. So we've got a really good, we take those that nobody else can help. We try to get them, of course, the first spot is always, if they're without housing in a family, is Salvation Army, but they've been full for 2.5 years. The next is Community Action that we work with that has funding for hotel rooms. When they're full, we take them to our Give Kids a Home. And we have people who surround them with care. And we are excited that we're working towards something that I can't quite talk about yet. I mean, we hope to open our own Give Kids a Home by the 1st of February. So, but we just have to all keep taking bites out of the elephant. And it's nobody's got all the answers, nobody's got all the magic pills. But we're not called to do that. We're called as Catholic Christians for the preferential option for the poor and vulnerable, for the dignity, all the 7 different ones. That's what we're called to do. So.
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry to have taken the last question. I feel really selfish in having done that, but thank you so much for sharing what you did and for answering questions. Next week we'll have Rebecca Silorda speaking about the Catholic worker movement, and so we'll look forward to continuing our conversation in that way. Thank you so much for being with us, and please join me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Gotta love the Newman Center. You all have the heart of it.
We're so fortunate to have you here today.
Okay, it was my joy.